Welcome to the Scoop World Order. We have a special live show with the godfather of college football, Phil Steele. We're very excited about this one. Bill the Bank Green and I are going to be breaking down Ohio State football, national football, and we're going to get all of Phil's great predictions. First, as always, thank you guys for joining us. Please click like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to zoom through the intro and get right to our guy, Phil Steele. Phil, hang on. Most important part of the entire interview. The book, the Phil Steele Manual, is now exclusively at Barnes & Noble, and I will hold up my digital copy. So you have my digital copy. And Books A Million. If you're in Columbus, Ohio, Barnes & Noble. If you're Findlay, Cleveland, Books A Million. Phil Steele, tell them how else they can get it. I also bought Phil Steele Plus. I think I bought every single subscription I could buy last night. My credit card was ringing off the hook, so I'm sure Phil is smiling this morning. Phil, how are you, and where can our people get your book?
Well, you're a heck of a guy, Kirk. I appreciate that. The magazine is available, as you mentioned, Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. Now, that's exclusive this year. In years past, you could go to Walmart, you can go to Kroger, you can go to all those different places and get it. Not this year. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. And we gave Barnes & Noble extra copies, so there won't be, any, hopefully, no sellouts this year like we've had in the past. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Or you can go to philsteele.com. And when you go to philsteele.com, you can get the digital version like Kirk's got. Or if you buy the hard copy, you do have to pay a shipping cost because naturally things cost money to ship nowadays. But when you do purchase the hard copy through the office, we give you the digital magazine for free. So that's philsteele.com would be the place to go. And Kirk, we'll be updating that digital magazine all the way through September. So if you see a player out for the year, check your digital magazine. You'll see him circled on your page in the next day or so.
Yeah, it's the best. Well, we're an Ohio State dominated website. Phil, what are your predictions for Ohio State this year? Obviously, massive turnover, quarterback, left tackle. What do you project Ohio State out to be this year? I know you're very fond of Ryan Day and what he's done with the program, but what do you see for the Buckeyes this in 2023?
Well, they are a legitimate national title contender, and while there is a first-year starting quarterback, keep in mind Ohio State's had a lot of first-year starting quarterbacks in the last 10 years, and 9 of the last 10 years they've had the best quarterback in the Big Ten. So if you're Kyle McCord and you're throwing to the receiving core that he's got, which is the best receiving core in the country, you're in good shape. As you know, last year the running back unit was banged up. They were pulling people from linebacker to try to play running back, and things like that. This year the running back core is back intact fully. Biggest question marks I have is on the offensive line at tackle. The 2 tackle spots are a bit of a question mark to me right now. And then defensively, I'd like to see the secondary get a little bit better. It used to be almost every year Ohio State ranked in the top 10 of my past defense rankings. But last year they were just number 54, and that was like the third straight year where they weren't in the top 10. They're going to have to get better in the secondary. But talent-wise, I've got them number 2 in my power poll, which is the second most talented team in the country. Let's face it, this team's a missed field goal away from winning the national title last year. I think if Ohio State would have matched up against TCU, they would have crushed them in the championship game, much like Georgia crushed TCU. So it's a talented team, but the biggest question mark I have is the schedule. They have to play Notre Dame on the road, and I think Notre Dame is very dangerous. They have to play Wisconsin on the road, my number 1 surprise team. And there's that team up north they have to play on the road as well in Ann Arbor.
I agree. Bank, you're chomping at the bit. Go ahead and fire away with your questions.
Yeah, I wanted to take a quick look back, and that's normally what I like to do. But Phil, last year, they made a change in D coordinator, obviously not happy with Kerry Combs. Went to Jim Knowles. Tell me what you saw schematically and talent. They got crushed by Michigan and Georgia. They put up, both teams scored over 40 points. Both had nearly 500 yards. Michigan had 5 touchdowns, over 50 yards. You shouldn't have that in a year. So what did you see out of Jim Knowles? And where do you see it going this year?
Well, the one thing, if you go back and look at Jim Knowles and his history at Oklahoma State, it's a defense that's a little complex. And so when you go back to look at Oklahoma State, where Knowles was there from 18 to 21, in 2018, they allowed 452 yards per game. They got better the next year to 412. They got better the next year to 379. They got dominant in his final year there with 298. I think we're going to see improvement for Ohio State in the second year of the system. We saw that at Oklahoma State under Knowles, and I like the talent level. And frankly, coming into last year, linebacker was a major concern I had coming into the season, but I love what he got out of Steele Chambers, Tommy Eichenberg. They've got a guy in C.J. Hicks who's just chomping at the bit to play, who's my number one rated linebacker out of high school. So I love what he did with the linebacking core last year. I think there's plenty of talent on the defensive side of the ball. It's the second year in the system, and I don't think we're going to see those 40-plus games like they allowed in the two matchups that you talked about.
Fair enough. I should have pointed out also, let me hold up my copy, a hard copy of Phil Steele. I'm old, man. I do hard copy. And college football starts for me the day I get my hard copy of Phil Steele's magazine. That's when college football has now started for me, and that's when I do everything. And I've said this for years, not just because you're on the show, and our followers know that. So, man, kudos to you for what you do. I couldn't do without this thing, and then the digital updates as well. So this plays such a part in everything I do throughout the season.
Hey, I appreciate that, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, right from the heart. So Ohio State, we talked last year when you and I judged teams, we kind of do it the same way, which made me feel really good, is we look at head coach, quarterback, defense, O-line, and then intangibles in that order. And you also specified that not just defense, but you look at defensive line. So when I look at all those areas, I mean, quarterback, so unsettled. Defense should be good, but those guys, that could be the old line of, hey, the good news is we got everybody back, and the bad news is we got all them same guys back. O-line, I couldn't tell you who 3 starters are going to be, let alone 5. So for me, betting line on Ohio State, 10.5, over under. I think I can find 2 losses on that schedule. You mentioned the away games. I'm going to throw another one in there, the at Purdue. And I don't care if people think Purdue isn't any good. That is never a place that Ohio State likes to go. And then Ohio State gets Penn State at home. Penn State absolutely cannot beat Ohio State, but they're always close. Is this the year that Penn State breaks through? Because I feel if Penn State beats Ohio State, they're going to the playoffs.
Yeah, I do think Penn State has that capability this year. And you look at their team defensively. I rate Penn State's defensive line number 3 in the country. I rate their linebacking core number 4 in the country. I rate their secondary number 1 in the country. Yes, they lose a number 2 and a number 3 DC, but they were number 2 in my past defense ratings last year. They've got Kalen King at cornerback. And they also have Keaton Ellis at the safety spot. They are loaded in the secondary again this year. So they've got one of the best defenses. Now, can they run the football? Well, they got a couple of guys back there, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, that have proven they were dynamic as true freshmen. Now they're sophomores, a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. They've got a veteran offensive line. In fact, Coach Franklin, when I was talking to him, said it's one of the better offensive lines he's had since he's been here. He's been there quite some time. This is his 10th year at the helm. You look at the receiving core, they've got a legitimate tight end and Theo Johnson, and Tyler Warren, another top-notch tight end. They bring in Dante Cephas from Kent State, who was one of their top receivers there, to add into a Keandre Lambert-Smith. So is this the year Penn State can get over the hump? It's quite possible. As you mentioned, they gave Ohio State quite a game last year. 2 years ago, they upset Michigan in Ann Arbor, and at home, I should say. They nearly upset Michigan. They ended up losing that one by on a late touchdown. But I think that Penn State has that capability this year, so a very dangerous game.
I like Manny Diaz, D coordinator. Last year they held 9 teams under 21 points, and that's impossible to do in this passing era we're in. Who's your pick to win the Big Ten? Who wins the Big Ten and goes to the playoffs?
Coming into it, I figured when I do the magazine in a 3 write-through process, the first write-through is the postseason write-through. The second one is a pre-spring, and then the third one is after talking to the coaches. And after the second write-through this year, I hadn't looked at the schedule yet, but I'm like, I'm going to go with whichever team, Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan, gets the other 2 at home. That's going to make it really easy. Guess what? None of them do. So if Penn State's got to travel to Ohio State, Michigan's got to travel to Penn State, and Ohio State's got to travel to Michigan. So I think when you look at the overall schedules of the three, the best one belongs to Michigan because Penn State does draw Iowa out of the West. And while you may think of Iowa and think of last year's offense, keep in mind 2 years ago they were putting up 30 points per game, and they got a tremendous addition at the quarterback spot with Cade McNamara, at tight end with Eric All. They're going to have a vastly improved offense, and they're dangerous. So drawing Iowa I thought was tough, also having to play Ohio State on the road and getting Michigan Happy Valley. So I went with Michigan this year to get it. Based on the fact that they really only have the one tough road game at Penn State. Other than that, they're playing Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, all in the winnable category. Their non-conference slate's super manageable. East Carolina's in a rebuilding year, UNLV and Bowling Green. So they really have the talent to have the best record of the three teams, and that's why I went with Michigan. But it was splitting hairs. And I tell you what, if you gave Ohio State Michigan schedule or Penn State Michigan schedule, I probably would have picked them to win the Big Ten East.
Wow. And then in the West, Luke Fickell is just a favorite of ours. We've known him forever and just think the world of him as a coach and as a person. How do you see him impacting the Badgers in year one?
I echo your sentiment with Coach Fickell. I think he's one of the best out there, and he's the only guy to take a group of five team and get them into the playoff. And, I got to be honest with you. Once again, I didn't look at the schedule after doing this prior to the second right through when I was looking at it. And I was picking Iowa to win the Big Ten West because of the talent they have. They are loaded this year. As mentioned, Cade McNamara. The second he jumped in the portal, guys, I saw the name and I'm like, go to Iowa. That would be your perfect fit. And guess what? Boom. He showed up at Iowa along with Eric All. They've got one of their best offensive lines they've had in years. They've been inexperienced there the last 2 years. They actually have a semblance of a receiving core this year, loaded at tight end. And defensively, as long as Phil Parker's still there, they've got one of the best defenses. They've got one of the best special teams. They're a loaded team. But they have to play Wisconsin on the road. They also have to play Penn State on the road. So I went with Wisconsin to win the West this year. And let me give you a couple of reasons why. Now, they were 7-6 last year. So that's a pretty big jump going from 7-6 to winning the West. But when I look at the team, first of all, Luke Fickell's coming in, and they're bringing Phil Longo in his pass offense from North Carolina. That was a concern until I talked to Coach Fickell. They are not going full-blown pass offense. They are going to throw the football more. They've got Tanner Mordecai coming over from SMU. They've got some solid receivers that they brought in, but he feels it's going to open up the run game for Braylon Allen and Ches Maluzzi by giving them more space. They got the big offensive line, and last year their defense only had 3 starters back. This year they got 8 starters back on the defensive side of the ball. So it's a much more experienced, more talented Wisconsin team this year, and they've got a great schedule. You look at their road games: Purdue, very winnable; Illinois is down a notch from last year. Indiana, very winnable. And Minnesota, another winnable game, and one that Wisconsin always travels well when they play Minnesota on the road. So it won't be a massive crowd edge there. They get Ohio State at home, a very dangerous game for the Buckeyes. They get Iowa at home. So when you look at their schedule, this is a team that could easily get double-digit wins, if not 11, and perhaps even 12 wins this year. And if they find themselves in the Big Ten title game, I think Wisconsin gives a challenge to whoever they play, whether it be Michigan, whether it be Ohio State, or whether it be Penn State. And that's why I've got Wisconsin, my number one surprise team in the country, which is a non-top 10 team that I think has a shot at actually making the playoffs this year.
Wow. I guess we gave you a good lead in there, huh?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bill.
Then no, Kirk, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is it with a guy like Luke Fickell? I've known him for 20 years now, since he was a young coach into being a head coach in 2011. When you interview these guys and you really get to know them, do you have to kind of take off your, man, I really like that guy hat when you're doing like a good hardcore evaluation of their roster and their chances? Because like Luke is a guy that he's an honorable guy, a great family guy, great player at Ohio State. Like, I mean, Bill's interacted with him, and it's like you can't, there's not many guys you're gonna like more than Luke Fickell just being around him. Is it hard sometimes to project, maybe, I'm not saying like Luke, but if there's a coach that's a really good guy and he's been good to you, to project him to not have maybe as good of a season?
Yes, that definitely, it is something that is tough. Again, let me give you an example this year. Neil Brown at West Virginia, heck of a guy. I remember his first year at Troy. I said, "Hey, coach, I got my all Sun Belt team. You want to give me a little help on that?" And he's more than willing with his time. I appreciate it. He always spends a good hour plus on the phone with me, going over the squad. He's always like, text me anytime, call me anytime. And this year at West Virginia, he's on the hot seat, and he's got two early games, Pitt and Penn State. And I remember last year. You go back to Brian Harsin at Auburn. If they had beaten Penn State, I think Auburn would have had a much different year. But once they lost to Penn State and lost to him like they did, he was basically dead man walking. Then do the players even listen to the coach, knowing that he's not going to be their head coach anymore? And look at the tailspin that Auburn went in last year. That's a major concern of mine for West Virginia. One of the reasons I picked them lower. And when I'm picking them lower, I'm like, you know what? I might not be talking to Neil Brown next year, which is a concern of mine. But as far as Luke Fickell goes, I'm going to go back to Cincinnati and talking to Coach Fickell the first year. He had a clear plan and presence with him that first year, what he was going to do, the way he was going to build the team. And you look at that first year and how it went. They were just 4-8. But the second year I was looking at his roster, I'm like, they're better. Well, guess what? They went 11-2, then 11-3, 9-1. All of a sudden they were dominant in the American Conference. But he told me that first year how he was going to build it. And you know what? It's not about winning and losing this first year. It's about building the program and getting my players in and getting them doing it right. So I had a lot of respect for the job that Coach Fickell did at Cincinnati.
Phil, if you're going to talk college football, you have to spend some time on the SEC. They collect trophies down there. So I'm of the opinion that when I look at Alabama's over under 10.5, I think they have holes. And I think I can find 2 losses on a schedule. They play Texas early. Texas scared the heck out of them not too long ago. At A&M, a team I know you like. Home for Tennessee, home for LSU, and I love Brian Kelly. And then, the Auburn, the Iron Bowl. I think I'm going to find 2 losses there and bet under on Bama. Any thoughts there on Bama?
Yeah, I'd have them. I probably, if I was setting an over under for Bama, I'd probably put it at 10.5, just for those reasons. I'm not strong either over or under for Alabama this year. Now, first of all, let's go make a case for the under. The under would be the fact this is an inexperienced squad. They're number 127 on my experience chart. Last year they were number 52. They only have 5 starters back on offense. They only have 5 starters back on defense. And some teams will say they have a quarterback battle and they really don't. Alabama has a quarterback battle. You don't know who it's going to be. Is it going to be Tyler Buckner? Is it going to be Jalen Milroe? Heck, it could even be Ty Simpson. We don't know that right now. They're an inexperienced squad, both sides of the ball. You talked about the tough teams they're playing: Texas, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and LSU. Those are 4 really tough games in the Iron Bowl. Even last year, Auburn gave them a really good game. So that's your case for the under. Now, if you want to make a case for the over, the last 2 years, Alabama's been number 1 in the preseason poll. And that's usually, I think Nick Saban's only won the national title once when he's been preseason number 1. But put him preseason number 3, 4, or 5, his team's very dangerous. Look at the last time. They were preseason number 3 in 2020. They went 13-0 that year. So they've got the talent. He brings in the best recruiting class every single year. They're struggled on the road the last 2 years, but they haven't struggled at home. They get LSU at home. They get Texas at home. They get Tennessee at home. The one game that would concern me the most is Texas A&M on the road because they struggled. The last time they went to College Station, they lost. Even last year, A&M in a 5-7 season was at their 2-yard line at the end of the game, throwing into the end zone with a chance to win. I can see them losing to A&M, but I only have that game at Pick'em, so I really don't have them a true underdog in any game this year, and that would be your case for the over. Frankly, I'd just leave that one alone. But, Bill, if you feel like betting the under, feel free.
Yeah, I'm the guy that bets against Nick Saban. How you think that's going to go? I'll have my house for sale here, by January. Another thing in the SEC, I am a huge, huge Brian Kelly guy. And Brian Kelly now gets dudes to coach instead of future scientists and future political leaders. He's got guys now. And I think that when I see Les Miles won a national title at LSU, I saw Ed Orgeron win a national title at LSU. Not to denigrate those 2 guys, they're not Brian Kelly as a coach. So I think LSU is a surprise team this year. They may not win the SEC, but they're going to hurt somebody somewhere along the way. Thoughts on LSU and Brian Kelly?
Yeah, and last year I thought he did a remarkable job. I do a weekly radio show in Baton Rouge, actually, and early in the year they lost to Florida State. They needed a comeback against Mississippi State. They needed a big comeback against Auburn. They got blown out by Tennessee, and the mood there was okay. We're 3-2, 4-2 at this point after the blowout loss to Tennessee. But look at the rest of the schedule. Are we even going to make a bowl game? And there was major questions going on at LSU. And then, of course, they got the win over Florida, the comeback win over Mississippi, the big overtime game against Bama, and all of a sudden things got better. They still had some struggles, like the loss to A&M, the loss to Georgia in the SEC title game, and then they beat a depleted Purdue team. So I don't think they were quite as good as the 10-4 record last year, but getting them to 10-4 is a great job. And now they go from number 109 on my experience chart all the way up to number 49. It's a much more veteran team. They've got two very capable quarterbacks in Daniels and Nussmeier, and they've got plenty of talent around. As you mentioned, they've got players at LSU. So I think the possibility exists for them to make a big noise. They do play Florida State early. Florida State's loaded this year. They play Ole Miss on the road. They play Bama on the road. Those are going to be some tough wins for them, but I could see LSU being a contender in the West.
Real quick, so we got a couple minutes left. I gotta tell just a real quick story. 04, you're the only magazine that picked me to start at right tackle, and I asked you about that, and you said it's because a coach said that you were really good in practice, really coming on. Pick him, which I thought was incredible because that was the chalk was someone else, and then you went against the grain and picked me. In your depth chart, your Ohio State depth chart, you project Sonny Styles to start at the adjuster safety, which is the free safety, and Jihad Carter at the nickel. What gleaned you to pick them? I know, because again, I know that you're ultra in depth talking to coaches and coordinators and that type of thing. What did you see or glean with Jihad Carter and Sonny Styles to project them to start in your Ohio State depth chart?
Well, I put Carter at that nickel spot because I feel he's very similar to McAllister. He's got a lot of experience. He did have the knee injury in the spring, but he's very coachable, and I think that's a good spot for him. Now, it's going to be tough for him to actually start there, but that's the reason I'd put him there. And as far as Sonny Styles goes, I mean, this guy's just a freak. I think he's special. He should be a true freshman this year. Remember, he redid his thing, and I think it's going to be tough to keep him off the field. So I'm not necessarily saying he's going to start week one, but I think at the end of the year he'll be your starter. So that's the reason I went with those two.
Bill Green almost spit his Diet Coke out when he said you compared him to Tanner McAllister. That is one of Bill Green's guys. Bank, you agree with the Jihad Carter thing? Do you think he can start at nickel? He's a guy I honestly haven't really thought much about because he missed most of spring. But what are your thoughts on that projection? Because I think it's very interesting.
I can't wait to see how they line up. Lathan Ransom's in the mix there. They brought Igmanosin in to start at one corner. Burke's got the other corner. So Jim Knowles insists on playing that three safety defense, and he also insists on playing a lot of man-to-man, which he knows more than I know. But, man, it sure wasn't working last year when you had Ronnie Hickman and Tanner McAllister couldn't cover you or me. So, that's my final thought on that is Jihad Carter's got to be better than – Jihad Carter with a broken leg would be better than Tanner McAllister.
Yeah. All right. Real quick as we wrap this up, Phil, give me a newcomer on offense, newcomer on defense for Ohio State. In a year from now, we'll say Phil Steele projected that this guy did what? Kyle McCord? Is it Josh Fryer? Give me a name on each side of the ball as we wrap this thing up.
Yeah, pretty easy on the offense to go with Kyle McCord. I mean, when you're throwing to that receiving core that he's got, Kyle McCord could very well be a Heisman contender at the end of the year. You just expect that out of the Ohio State quarterback. He's got everything you want at Ohio State. So I would put him in that respect. Defensively, I'm going to go with, he hasn't really done a lot yet, not living up to expectations yet, but Jack Sawyer. I think he can have that impact on the defensive line. I know people know who he is, but let's face it, he hasn't played up to expectation level yet. Maybe this is the year he emerges.
I agree. All right, so as we wrap this thing up, Barnes & Noble, books among the two exclusive distributors of Phil Steele this year, so do not go beat up the guy at Kroger or Giant Eagle because they don't have the Phil Steele in stock like they always have before. The easiest way to do it is philsteele.com, and Steele is Steele. And just get on there. That's what I did last night. I got the digital, I bought every copy you could imagine. Phil, appreciate you so much. We love having you. Hopefully have you again this season because we always love having you on. Any parting words for the Buckeye Scoop members watching today?
Just I love being on your podcast each and every time, and yeah, we should do this more often. So have me on. Let's do it later July. Let's do one in August. Let's do these things. I enjoy talking football with you guys.
Oh, I got to go out and smoke a cigarette. You just said that. That's perfect. So I appreciate you so much, my man. I know that you're on a time crunch, so I'm going to let you go. I'm going to wrap this show up. Again, the great Phil Steele, a proud member of BuckeyeScoop.com and a guy that has been fantastic to our great little crew. We appreciate him so much. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a like, click subscribe, and also join BuckeyeScoop.com. We are going to be on their bank. It's going to head back to his chat. He's been grinding along all day, but what a great episode. Phil is the man. And he's also an Ohio guy. He's from Cleveland. So Ohio people got to support Ohio people. Go out and get that magazine, get the digital copy. Super easy. You won't regret it. If you have an iPad and you put that digital copy on, it's just beautiful to leaf through as you're watching your favorite college football game. So thank you guys so much. I'm heading back onto BuckeyeScoop.com for Bill Green's chat. But thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.